The air in the Suffolk County Superior Court didn't just grow quiet, it froze. Judge Pendergast, a man who had presided over Boston's grittiest mob trials without blinking, dropped his pen. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Harrison Sterling, heir to a billion-dollar pharmaceutical dynasty, stood paralyzed, his knuckles white against the mahogany table. He had spent 5 years trying to bury the memory of the woman standing across the aisle, the woman his mother had destroyed, to save their reputation. But when the clerk read the name on the birth certificate filed in evidence, the Sterling legacy didn't just crack, it shattered. The secret wasn't just about a baby, it was about a crime so buried, even the victim didn't know she had been played. Harrison Sterling was not designed for failure. At 26, he was the spitting image of his father, Richard Tall, with the kind of jawline that looked carved from granite and eyes the color of a stormy Atlantic Ocean. He wore bespoke suits from Savile Row and carried the weight of the Sterling pharmaceutical empire on his shoulders. His life was a series of spreadsheets, board meetings in glass-walled conference rooms, and charity galas where the champagne cost more than a Honda Civic. But Harrison was suffocating. It was a rainy Tuesday in November when the suffocating stopped. He had ducked into Callahan's, a dive bar in South Boston, to escape a paparazzi swarm that had caught wind of a failed merger. He wasn't supposed to be there. Men with surnames like Sterling didn't drink beer from a tap that hadn't been cleaned since the Red Sox won the pennant in '04. That was where he saw her. Maya Linwood was 23, wearing a stained apron and carrying a tray of loaded nachos that smelled like grease and heaven. She wasn't a supermodel. She didn't have the polished, porcelain veneer of the debutantes. His mother, Victoria Sterling, paraded in front of him every weekend. Maya had messy dark curls tied back with a shoelace, tired eyes, and a laugh that cut through the noise of the jukebox playing Journey. When she dropped a coaster in front of him, she didn't swoon. She didn't ask for a selfie. She looked at his $5,000 Italian suit, then at the sticky floor, and raised an eyebrow. "You look like you're waiting for a kidnapping ransom drop," she said, her voice raspy from a double shift. "Bud Light? Or Guinness? Don't ask for wine. The only vintage we have is last Tuesday." Harrison blinked, stunned. "Guinness. Please." They talked for 3 hours. He learned she was studying paralegal courses online, that she was raising her younger brother, Leo, because her parents died in a car wreck on I-93, and that she hated clam chowder despite living in New England. She didn't know who he was. To her, he was just Harry, a guy who looked sad and tipped well. For the next 6 months, Harrison lived a double life. By day, he was the ruthless VP of operations for Sterling Pharma. By night, he was Harry, sitting in Maya's cramped apartment in Dorchester, helping Leo with his math homework and eating takeout Thai food on a couch that sagged in the middle. He fell in love with the ferocity of a man who had been starving for decades. Maya was real. She was the anchor in his sea of artificial pleasantries. But in the world of the Sterlings, secrets have a shelf life. It unraveled on a Sunday. Harrison had decided to propose. He had bought a ring, not a gaudy diamond from the family vault, but a vintage sapphire from a small jeweler in Beacon Hill, something unique. He planned to take her to the public garden, but when he arrived at her apartment, the door was already open. Inside, sitting on the sagging couch, was Victoria Sterling. His mother didn't look like a villain. She looked like royalty. She was wearing a cream-colored Chanel suit that cost more than the entire building. Her hands, manicured to perfection, were folded over a leather dossier. Maya was standing in the kitchen doorway, holding a dish towel, her face pale. Leo was nowhere to be seen. "Mother," Harrison said, his voice dropping an octave. "What are you doing here?" Victoria turned her head slowly, her expression one of mild disappointment, as if he were a waiter who had brought the wrong soup. "I am cleaning up your mess, Harrison," she said smoothly. "Honestly, South Boston? It's so cliché." "Get out," Harrison snapped, stepping toward Maya. He put a protective arm around her, but Maya flinched. She looked terrified. "She knows about Leo," Maya whispered, her voice trembling. Harrison frowned. What about Leo? Victoria stood up, brushing invisible dust from her skirt. Miss Linwood has been stealing from her employer. A tragedy, really. Callahan's isn't exactly a high-margin business. If the police were to find out, she would go to prison. And Leo, well, the foster care system is notoriously unkind to teenage boys with behavioral issues. That's a lie, Harrison roared. Maya is the most honest person I know. Is she? Victoria opened the leather dossier. She slid a stack of photos across the coffee table. They were grainy, taken from a security camera. They showed Maya taking cash from the register and putting it into her pocket. Harrison looked at the photos, then at Maya. Maya? Tears streamed down her face. Harry, the owner, he lets me take advances. He knows. I pay it back every Friday. Mr. Callahan has signed a sworn affidavit stating otherwise, Victoria said, her voice like ice. He claims you've embezzled over $5,000 in the last year. Harrison felt the room spin. He knew his mother. She didn't just make threats. She constructed realities. She had likely paid Callahan 10 times that amount to sign that paper. What do you want? Harrison asked, his voice shaking. I want you to leave, Victoria said to Harrison. Now, you have a meeting with the senator's daughter in an hour, and you, she turned to Maya, will take this check, move out of Boston, and never contact my son again. If you do, I will file these charges. Leo will be in a group home by sunset. She placed a check on the table. It was for $500,000. Maya looked at Harrison. Her eyes were pleading, begging him to fix it. But Harrison was 26 and controlled by the purse strings of a billion-dollar trust. He looked at the affidavit. He looked at the check. He looked at the power his mother held. If he stayed, she would destroy Maya's life. She would put Maya in jail and Leo in the system just to prove a point. Take the money, Maya, Harrison said, his voice dead. Maya recoiled as if he had slapped her. What? Take it, he choked out, unable to look her in the eye. My mother doesn't bluff. I can't protect you from this. You're a coward, Maya whispered. Harrison turned and walked out the door, leaving the ring in his pocket and his heart on the floor of a Dorchester apartment. He heard Maya's sob as he reached the hallway, a sound that would haunt him for 5 years. 5 years is a long time in the real world, but in the Sterling bubble, it was just a series of fiscal quarters. Harrison had changed. The light in his eyes had gone out, replaced by a cold, shark-like efficiency. He was now the CEO. His father, Richard, had retired to Palm Beach after a stroke, leaving Harrison in command. The company's stock was at an all-time high. Harrison was engaged to Abigail van der Hoven, a woman who had the personality of a well-decorated throw pillow, but whose father owned the largest distribution network in Europe. It was a merger, not a marriage. Harrison drank more scotch than he used to. He rarely slept, and he never went to South Boston. But the past has a way of knocking on the door when you least expect it. It arrived in the form of a subpoena. Harrison was in his corner office on the 40th floor, overlooking the Charles River, when his assistant, Sarah, buzzed in. She sounded nervous. Mr. Sterling, there are 2 marshals here to see you. Harrison frowned. Marshals? Send them to legal. That's what I pay Nathaniel for. They say it's personal, sir. They have a warrant for a DNA sample. Harrison froze. He told Sarah to let them in. The marshals were professional, brisk. They handed him a court order, a paternity suit. The plaintiff, the state of Massachusetts, on behalf of a minor child. The mother, Maya Linwood. Harrison stared at the paper. The world tilted on its axis. A child? He did the math instantly. 5 years. If she was pregnant when he left, he drove to his mother's estate in Chestnut Hill. He didn't call ahead. He stormed past the butler, into the solarium, where Victoria was arranging orchids. Did you know? He demanded, slamming the subpoena onto the glass table. Pots rattled. Victoria looked at the paper, then up at him. She didn't flinch. I see she's run out of money. I told you, Harrison. People like that always come back for more. Did you know? Harrison repeated, his voice dangerously low. She sent a letter, Victoria admitted, snipping a dead leaf. About 4 months after you rectified your mistake, she claimed she was carrying your child. Obviously, it was a ploy. I burned it. Harrison felt a surge of rage so pure, it nearly blinded him. You burned it? You burned a letter about my child? I protected you from a gold digger. Victoria snapped, finally losing her cool composure. She took $500,000, Harrison. She sold you out. If she really loved you, she wouldn't have taken the money. She would have fought. But she didn't. She took the check and ran. And now that the cash is gone, she's using a bastard child to get another payout. We will fight this. Nathaniel will destroy her in court. I'm not fighting it, Harrison said. If that child is mine, if that child is yours, we will handle it quietly, Victoria hissed. An NDA, a trust fund. But you will not blow up the merger with the Vander Hovens over a barmaid's mistake. Harrison looked at his mother, really looked at her, for the first time in years. He saw the lines of cruelty around her mouth, the emptiness in her eyes. Get Nathaniel on the phone, Harrison said. Good, Victoria nodded, smoothing her skirt. He'll file a motion to dismiss. No, Harrison said, turning to leave. He's going to represent me, against you if he has to. I'm going to court. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. The media got wind of it, of course. Sterling Scion, in secret love child scandal, was the headline on the Boston Globe. Harrison arrived at the courthouse, flanked by security. He looked for Maya, but she wasn't there. Instead, a court-appointed lawyer represented the state. But then, the side door opened. Maya walked in. She looked different, older, harder. The soft curls were cut into a sharp bob. She wore a cheap but neat gray suit. She didn't look at Harrison. She looked straight ahead, her jaw set. But she wasn't alone. Holding her hand was a little boy. Harrison's breath caught in his throat. The boy, about 4 years old, had messy dark hair like Maya's. But he had Harrison's nose, and he had the sterling eyes, that distinct, stormy gray-blue that had been in oil paintings in the manor for generations. There was no need for a DNA test. Harrison knew it in his bones. But as the proceedings began, the drama took a turn no one expected. Maya's lawyer, a scrappy public defender named Oscar Ramirez, stood up. Your Honor, Ramirez said, we are not here seeking child support. Judge Pendergast looked over his glasses. The filing says paternity and support, counselor. The filing was automatic because Miss Linwood applied for state health care assistance for the child's surgery, Ramirez explained. But we are here to prove that Mr. Sterling is unfit to be a father. In fact, we are asking the court to terminate his parental rights permanently. Harrison stood up, ignoring his lawyer's hand on his arm. What? No, I didn't even know he existed. Maya finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were burning with a hatred so cold, it lowered the temperature in the room. You knew, she said, her voice shaking but loud enough for the back row to hear. You knew, because I told you. I never got a letter, Harrison pleaded. My mother. Not a letter, Maya cut him off. I came to you, 4 years ago, at the gala, for the Children's Hospital. I bought a ticket I couldn't afford. I walked right up to you, in the VIP line. I told you I had your son. I told you he was sick. Harrison shook his head, confused. That never happened. I would remember that. You looked right at me, Maya said, tears welling up now. You looked at me, laughed, and told security to take out the trash. You said, I paid you to disappear, so disappear. Harrison stared at her. The memory wasn't there. He racked his brain. 4 years ago? The Children's Hospital gala? He had been there. He remembered the champagne. He remembered nothing. He had been blackout drunk. It was the height of his depression. After the breakup, he had been functioning on autopilot and premium scotch. Had he done it? Had he become such a monster that he looked the woman he loved in the eye and threw her out? I don't remember, Harrison whispered. Convenient, Maya spat. My son needed heart surgery. I begged you. You turned me away. I had to sell everything. I had to work 3 jobs. I saved him. Me. Alone. You don't get to be a father now, just because you're bored. The courtroom buzzed. Harrison sank into his chair. He looked at the little boy, who was coloring in a book, oblivious to the war being fought over him. Then, Ramirez dropped the first bomb. Your Honor, to prove the defendant's character and his knowledge of the child, we would like to submit Exhibit A. Security footage from the Park Plaza Hotel dated October 14th, 4 years ago. The screen in the courtroom flickered to life. Harrison watched, terrified of what he would see. The courtroom lights dimmed, casting long, skeletal shadows against the wood-paneled walls. The large monitor, to the left of the judge's bench, flickered, then stabilized into the grainy, black-and-white perspective of a security camera. The timestamp read, the 14th of October, 2019, 11:42 p.m. Location, VIP entrance, Park Plaza Hotel. Harrison leaned forward, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He remembered the night of the gala. He remembered the flashing lights of the paparazzi, the suffocating knot of his bow tie, and the endless flutes of champagne his mother kept handing him. But he did not remember this. On the screen, a younger Harrison stumbled out of the side door. He looked disheveled. His tie was undone, his hair a mess. He was leaning heavily against a stone pillar, swaying. Then, Maya appeared. In the courtroom, the real Maya looked down at her hands, her knuckles white. She couldn't watch. On the screen, the video Maya was wearing a frantic expression and a coat that looked too thin for October. She rushed up to Harrison. There was no audio at first, just the silent pantomime of a woman begging. She grabbed his arm. She pointed to a photo in her hand. Then, the audio kicked in, hollow and distorted, but undeniable. Harry, please, the video Maya sobbed. He's in the ICU. The doctors say he needs a specialist. I can't afford the transfer. He's your son. His name is Noah. Please, just look at the photo. On screen, Harrison pulled his arm away violently. He stumbled back, steadying himself against the wall. He looked at her with eyes that seemed glazed, almost dead. I don't know you, the video Harrison slurred. His voice was cold, stripped of all the warmth he had once shown her in Callahan's bar. Security, get this trash out of here. Harry, it's me. It's Maya. I paid you, video Harrison sneered, leaning in close to her face. I gave you a check to disappear, so do what you're paid to do. Disappear, or I'll have the police pick up your brother. 2 large security guards stepped into the frame. They grabbed Maya by the shoulders. She screamed Harrison's name one last time before they dragged her into the darkness of the parking lot. Harrison watched them go, then turned and vomited into a potted plant before wiping his mouth and stumbling back inside the gala. The screen went black. The silence in the courtroom was heavier than lead. It was the kind of silence that precedes an execution. Judge Pendergast slowly removed his glasses. He looked at Harrison with an expression of profound disgust. Mr. Sterling, the judge said, his voice quiet but thundering in the stillness. I have sat on this bench for 20 years. I have seen murderers, thieves, and con artists, but I have rarely seen a display of callousness quite like that. Harrison sat frozen. He felt like he was floating outside of his body. He had watched the man on the screen. He recognized the face, the voice, the suit, but the soul? That wasn't him. He would never call Maya trash. He would never threaten Leo. Dimas. Harrison stood up, his legs shaking. Your Honor, I swear to you, I don't remember that. That isn't me. It is literally you, Mr. Sterling. Oscar Ramirez, Maya's lawyer, said dryly. And it proves exactly why you should have no rights to Noah. You were not just absent, you were cruel. You rejected your child when he was dying. I was drunk, Harrison stammered. Looking around the room for an ally, he found none. The gallery was glaring at him. Even the court stenographer looked repulsed. He looked at his mother, Victoria, in the front row. Victoria Sterling was the only person not looking at him with disgust. She was looking at her fingernails, her face a mask of bored indifference. Sit down, Harrison, Nathaniel, his family lawyer, hissed, pulling on his sleeve. Don't speak. We'll move for a mistrial, based on the audio quality. No, Harrison yanked his arm away. I didn't say that. I wouldn't. Mr. Sterling, sit down or I will hold you in contempt, the judge warned. Harrison sank into his chair, defeated. He looked across the aisle at the little boy, Noah. The boy was looking at him now. His eyes were wide, confused. He had just heard a man on TV scream at his mother. Harrison felt a shard of ice pierce his heart. He had already lost. The video was irrefutable. "The court will recess for lunch," Judge Pendergast announced, banging the gavel. "We will reconvene at 2 p.m. for the ruling. And Mr. Sterling, I suggest you prepare yourself. Unless there is a miracle, I am inclined to grant the plaintiff's request for full termination of rights." Harrison didn't go to lunch. He didn't go to the upscale bistro where Nathaniel had reserved a table. Instead, he walked into the men's restroom of the courthouse, locked the door to the handicap stall, and loosened his tie until he could breathe. He splashed cold water on his face, staring at his reflection in the mirror. The gray eyes staring back looked haunted. "I paid you to disappear." The words from the video echoed in his mind. He had never said that. He knew he hadn't. He had told her to take the money 5 years ago to save Leo, yes. But 4 years ago? At the gala? He hadn't seen her. Why couldn't he remember? He closed his eyes and tried to force his mind back to that night. October 14th, the gala. He remembered arriving. He remembered his mother handing him a drink, a special tonic, she called it, claiming he looked pale. He remembered the first sip. It was bitter, then fog, just thick, gray fog. Harrison's eyes snapped open. He patted his pockets and pulled out his phone. He didn't dial Nathaniel. Nathaniel was his mother's creature. He dialed a number he hadn't used since his rebellious college days. Miller Investigations. "Talk to me." "Jack, it's Harrison." There was a pause on the line. "Harrison Sterling? Well, look at that. The prodigal prince calls. I saw the news, Harry. You're getting roasted alive out there. Twitter is calling you Daddy Dearest. I need you to do something for me, Jack. Right now. I'll pay double your rush rate. I'm listening. I need the raw footage from the Park Plaza security cameras. Not just the clip they showed in court. I need the hour before that. And I need to know who was working security that night. The Park Plaza wipes their servers every 90 days, Harry. That was 4 years ago. My mother is on the board of the Park Plaza, Harrison said, his mind racing. She keeps archives of everything for insurance liability. It'll be on the Sterling private server. I'm texting you the access codes. I set them up myself before I became CEO. Okay, I'm in. What am I looking for? I don't know, Harrison whispered. Just prove I'm not a monster. Harrison spent the next hour pacing the courthouse hallway. He couldn't face Maya. Not yet. He watched from a distance as she sat on a bench, feeding Noah a sandwich. The boy laughed at something she said, and the sound was like a bell ringing in a graveyard. At 1:45 p.m., his phone buzzed. It was Jack. "Harry, you need to see this. I sent a video file to your secure email. Put headphones on." Harrison found a quiet corner near the vending machines. He put his AirPods in and opened the file. It was the same camera angle, but an hour earlier, 10:30 p.m. Harrison saw himself walking out the side door. But he wasn't alone. His mother, Victoria, was with him. She was holding a glass, the bitter tonic. "Drink it all, Harrison," she said on the tape. "You're making a scene inside. This will calm you down." Harrison watched himself drink it. Within 5 minutes, his posture changed. He slumped. His movements became jerky, robotic. Then, Victoria pulled out her phone. She made a call. 2 minutes later, a man in a dark suit walked out. Harrison recognized him instantly. It was Dr. Eris Thorne, a psychiatrist who had been on the Sterling payroll for years as a consultant. The camera zoomed in, digitally, Jack's handiwork. Dr. Thorne grabbed Harrison's chin, checking his eyes. "He's suggestible now, Victoria. The scopolamine blend is fast-acting. He won't remember anything, but he will respond to commands if you frame them as defensive triggers." "Good," Victoria said. "The girl is coming. Security spotted her at the gate. When she gets here, make sure he thinks she's a threat. Make sure he destroys her." Harrison felt bile rise in his throat. Scopolamine. Devil's breath. It was a drug that turned people into obedient zombies, wiping their memory while leaving them awake and able to speak. He hadn't been drunk. He had been weaponized. The video continued. Maya appeared. The confrontation played out exactly as the court had seen, but now Harrison understood. He was reciting a script planted in his mind by his own mother, but there was more. After Maya was dragged away, Victoria stepped out from the shadows. She walked up to the security guard, the one who had manhandled Maya. She handed him a thick white envelope. Then, she picked up something Maya had dropped in the scuffle. It was the photo Maya had tried to show Harrison. Victoria looked at the photo, ripped it in half, and dropped it into a trash can. "Jack," Harrison said into the phone, his voice shaking, with a rage he had never known existed. "Did you get the guard?" "Way ahead of you," Jack said. "His name is Gary Polson. He was fired 6 months later for theft. He lives in Revere. I'm already outside his house. He says, for 10 grand, he'll testify that your mother paid him to block Maya Linwood from entering the building, but she slipped past. He also says he heard your mother tell the doctor to fry his brain if you have to." Harrison hung up. The realization washed over him like a tidal wave. His mother hadn't just tried to break them up. She had chemically lobotomized him for a night, endangered his child's life, and framed him as a villain, all to keep the Sterling bloodline pure. He looked at the time. 1:58 p.m. Harrison sprinted back toward the courtroom. He burst through the double doors, just as the bailiff was saying, "All rise." Judge Pendergast looked annoyed. "Nice of you to join us, Mr. Sterling." Harrison ignored his lawyer. He walked straight to the center of the room. He looked at Maya. For the first time in 5 years, his eyes were clear. "Your Honor," Harrison said, his voice steady, "I have new evidence." "Mr. Sterling, the evidentiary phase is over," Pendergast sighed. "Not this evidence," Harrison said. He pulled a USB drive from his pocket. He had transferred the file from his phone in the hallway. "This proves I did not reject my son. It proves I was incapacitated and manipulated." "Objection," Nathaniel, his own lawyer, shouted, standing up. "My client is clearly distressed and not thinking straight. I ask for a recess." "You're fired," Harrison said to Nathaniel, not even looking at him. "Get out." "Excuse me?" Nathaniel blinked. "I said get out. You work for my mother, and she is the defendant now." A ripple of shock went through the gallery. Victoria Sterling, sitting in the front row, went rigid. Her porcelain mask cracked. "Mr. Sterling," the judge said, intrigued, "you are firing your counsel?" "I am representing myself, Your Honor, and I would like to submit Exhibit B, a security tape from 10:30 p.m. that same night. And I have a witness, on video call, who is willing to swear under oath that he was bribed by Victoria Sterling to keep Miss Linwood away from me." Maya looked at Harrison. Her expression shifted from hatred to confusion. She saw the way he was looking at his mother, with pure, unadulterated fury. "Approach the bench," the judge ordered. For the next 10 minutes, the courtroom was silent as the judge and the lawyers, Ramirez for Maya, and Harrison, representing himself, watched the new footage on the judge's private monitor. When Judge Pendergast looked up, his face was pale. He looked at Victoria Sterling. "Mrs. Sterling," the judge said, his voice icy, "I suggest you don't leave the building. The bailiff will escort you to a waiting room. The district attorney will likely want to speak with you." Victoria stood up, indignant. "This is preposterous. That video is a fabrication." "Sit down, Mother," Harrison said. The authority in his voice was absolute. It wasn't the voice of a son. It was the voice of the head of the family. "It's over." Victoria was escorted out, protesting loudly. The door slammed shut. Harrison turned to Maya. He walked over to her table. The bailiff moved to stop him, but the judge held up a hand. "Allow it." Harrison stopped 3 feet from her. He looked at Noah, then at her. "I didn't know," he whispered, tears finally spilling over. "She drugged me, Maya. I swear on my life, I would never hurt you." Maya searched his face. She was a woman who had learned to detect lies out of survival. She looked at the man trembling before her, stripped of his arrogance, stripped of his lawyer, standing alone against his own family. "I believe you," she whispered. But the drama wasn't over. Mr. Sterling, Judge Pendergast said, while this evidence mitigates your conduct at the gala, it does not change the fact that for 5 years you have been absent. Miss Linwood has raised this child alone. You have no relationship with the boy, and there is still the matter of the initial separation. You claimed you were forced, but Miss Linwood claims she was bribed. I was told she took the money, Harrison cried. My mother showed me the cash check, and I was told you signed the eviction notice on my apartment. Maya shot back. I never evicted you. I have the document. Maya pulled a crumbled piece of paper from her file, signed by Harrison Sterling. Harrison grabbed the paper. He looked at the signature. It was his, or at least, it looked like his, but he hadn't signed it. He looked closer at the document. It was notarized. And then he saw the name of the notary public. Twist incoming. The name of the notary wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a random clerk. It was Thomas Linwood. Harrison looked up, shock written all over his face. Maya, who is Thomas Linwood? Maya froze. Her face went drain white. That's my father's name. But he's dead. He died in the car crash with my mom 10 years ago. Then why? Harrison asked, holding up the paper. Did a dead man notarize your eviction notice 5 years ago? The courtroom gasped. Judge Pendergast leaned forward. Let me see that document. As the paper was passed to the judge, the air in the room shifted. This wasn't just about a bad breakup or a manipulative mother anymore. If your father is dead, Harrison said slowly, the gears turning in his head, then who signed this? And why does this seal match a registered notary in? He squinted at the stamp. The Cayman Islands? Maya stood up, her legs shaking. I don't know. But Harrison looked at her, and then he looked at Noah. Really looked at him. Maya, Harrison said, his voice dropping to a whisper. You said your parents died in a car crash. Did you see the bodies? No, she whispered. It was a closed casket. I was 17. My uncle handled it. Your uncle? Harrison asked. What's his name? Marcus Sterling. The entire courtroom erupted. Harrison stumbled back. Marcus Sterling? My father's estranged brother? The one who swore to destroy our branch of the family? No, Maya shook her head, tears streaming. He said his name was Marcus Linwood. He took us in. There is no Marcus Linwood, Harrison said, the horror dawning on him. My uncle Marcus changed his name after the embezzlement scandal 20 years ago. He disappeared. The pieces slammed together. Maya wasn't just a girl from Southie. She was his cousin. His second cousin, technically, but still blood. And that meant order. Order. Judge Pendergast banged his gavel. What is the meaning of this? Your Honor, Harrison said, turning to the judge, his face pale as a sheet. This woman, she isn't just the mother of my child. She is the daughter of my father's greatest enemy. And if my Uncle Marcus is alive, then this entire relationship, our meeting, everything, it wasn't an accident. He looked at Maya. You didn't bump into me at the bar that night, did you? Who told you to work at Callahan's? My uncle, Maya whispered, terrified. He said the tips were good. Harrison realized the truth. His mother was a monster, yes, but she wasn't the only player on the board. His Uncle Marcus had orchestrated the meeting. He had planted Maya in Harrison's path, hoping they would fall in love, have a child, and mix the bloodlines, giving Marcus a claim to the Sterling Trust Fund through the baby. But Victoria had found out. That's why she was so ruthless. That's why she destroyed them. She wasn't just fighting a poor waitress. She was fighting a hostile takeover. And amidst this war of billionaires, a little boy named Noah sat coloring, the heir to 2 warring kingdoms. The courtroom was cleared. Judge Pendergast had ordered a sealed chamber session, meaning the press was locked out, but the atmosphere inside remained suffocating. The air conditioner hummed, struggling against the heat of 20 bodies tense with adrenaline. Harrison sat at the defendant's table, his head in his hands. The possibility that he had slept with his cousin, that his son was a product of incest, made him physically ill. He couldn't look at Maya. He couldn't look at Noah. Across the aisle, Maya was hyperventilating. Her lawyer, Ramirez, was trying to calm her down, offering her a paper cup of water that she was shaking too hard to hold. Mr. Sterling, the judge said, addressing Harrison. This is a family court, not a criminal tribunal, but the implications of what has just been suggested are severe. We need clarity on the identity of Marcus Linwood. He is Marcus Sterling, Harrison said, his voice hollow. My father's younger brother. He was the CFO of Sterling Pharma 20 years ago. He embezzled $12 million and sold our patent for a leukemia drug to a competitor. My father gave him a choice: prison or exile. Marcus chose exile. We all thought he went to Thailand. We were told he died in a boating accident in 2015. He didn't die, Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. He's lived in Connecticut for 10 years. He raised me. Did he ever show you his birth certificate? Ramirez asked Maya gently. No, Maya shook her head. He said all his papers were lost in the fire that killed my parents. He said he was my mother's brother. Harrison stood up. He walked over to the bailiff. I need to make a call, not to a lawyer, to a lab. We need a DNA test, Harrison said, turning to Maya. Not for paternity, to see if we share DNA. We need to know if we are cousins. Maya looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of horror and heartbreak. And if we are, then we deal with it, Harrison said, though he didn't know how. But I need to know if our entire relationship was a setup. I need to know if you were. He couldn't say the word. Bait. The court ordered an emergency expedited DNA comparison. Because Noah was already in the system for the paternity suit, and Harrison had provided a sample, they just needed to run a familial match against Maya. While they waited, the drama shifted to the holding cell, where Victoria Sterling was being detained. Harrison was granted 5 minutes with her. He walked into the small, concrete room. Victoria was sitting on a metal bench, still looking impeccably dressed, though her face was pale. You knew, Harrison said, standing by the door. You knew she was Marcus's niece. I suspected, Victoria said coldly. Marcus sent me a letter 6 months before you met her. It just said, the sins of the father are visited upon the son. When you started dating a girl from Southie named Linwood, his mother's maiden name, I knew he was making his move. He wanted to infect our bloodline. He wanted a lawsuit. He wanted a piece of the company. So you destroyed my life to save the stock price? I saved you from him, Victoria snapped. Marcus is a sociopath, Harrison. If you had married her, if you had a child with her, Marcus would have emerged as the grandfather of the heir. He would have petitioned for custody if anything happened to you. He would have torn this family apart from the inside. I did what I had to do. You could have told me, Harrison yelled. You could have told me the truth instead of framing her for theft. Would you have believed me? Victoria scoffed. You were in love. You were blind. You would have thought I was making it up to separate you from your true love. So I made her the villain. It was cleaner. Cleaner, Harrison repeated, disgusted. You drugged me. You threatened a child. There is nothing clean about you, Mother. You're just as dirty as Marcus. He turned to leave. Harrison, she called out, if that DNA test comes back positive, if she is your cousin, you know the company is finished, right? The scandal will destroy us. Harrison didn't look back. Good. 3 hours later, the results were in. The lab had rushed the processing, understanding the high-profile nature of the case. Judge Pendergast held the envelope. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Even Noah had stopped coloring, sensing the tension in the adults around him. The results of the familial DNA comparison between Harrison Sterling and Maya Linwood, the judge began, adjusting his glasses. Harrison held his breath. Maya squeezed her eyes shut. Negative, the judge read. 0% shared genetic markers, indicating first, second, or third-degree relation. A collective exhale swept through the room. Harrison slumped against the table, relief washing over him so hard he almost fainted. They weren't cousins. It wasn't incest. But, the judge continued, frowning at the report, this raises a significant question. If Miss Linwood is not related to Mr. Sterling, then she is not related to Marcus Sterling, which means, he lied, Maya whispered. The realization hit her like a physical blow. He isn't my uncle. Suddenly, the double doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. A man walked in. He was in his late 60s, leaning on a cane with a silver handle. He wore a suit that was 10 years out of style but expensive. His face was lined, but his eyes were sharp, the same stormy gray as Harrison's. It was Marcus Sterling. "Objection!" Nathaniel, who was still technically in the room, though fired, shouted out of habit. "Uncle Marcus," Harrison said, standing up. The resemblance to his father was uncanny. Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He walked to the center of the aisle, ignoring the bailiffs. "I thought I should clear things up," Marcus said, his voice smooth as velvet, "since my dear sister-in-law Victoria made such a mess of things." "Who are you?" Maya asked, stepping out from behind her table. "You told me you were my mother's brother. You told me you took me in because no one else wanted me." "I took you in, Maya, because you were useful," Marcus said, looking at her with the clinical detachment of a scientist looking at a lab rat. "I found you in the foster system a week after your parents died. A tragic accident. You were pretty, smart, and you had a vulnerability that I knew the Sterling men couldn't resist. We have a savior complex, you see." "You bought me?" Maya's voice broke. "I adopted you," Marcus corrected, "legally, and I raised you to be the perfect trap. I encouraged you to go to that bar. I knew Harrison went there. I knew if you looked sad enough, he'd bite, and he did." "Why?" Harrison demanded, stepping between Marcus and Maya. "Why do this to her? To me? Because your father took everything from me," Marcus roared, his composure cracking for a second. "He took my shares. He took my name. I wanted him to watch his son fall in love with a nobody, have a bastard child, and then realized that the nobody was my creation. I wanted to own the heir to the Sterling throne." He looked at Noah. "Hello, Noah. Or should I say, Noah Marcus Sterling?" Harrison looked at the birth certificate evidence again. "The middle name. You named him," Harrison said to Maya. "You named him after him." "I thought he was the only family I had," Maya sobbed. "I thought he saved me." "He didn't save you, Maya," Harrison said, his voice hard. "He groomed you. And it worked," Marcus sneered. "Look at you. Broken. The company is in chaos. Victoria is in cuffs. I may not get the money, Harrison, but I won the game. I destroyed the Sterling reputation." "Not quite," Harrison said. He turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this man is a fugitive. There is an outstanding federal warrant for Marcus Sterling for corporate espionage and embezzlement from 2005. The statute of limitations was told because he fled the country." Marcus laughed. "I have a new identity. I am Marcus Linwood." "Not anymore," Harrison said. "You just admitted in open court, on the record, who you are, and you admitted to fraudulent adoption and child endangerment." Harrison nodded to the marshals at the back of the room. "Take him." Marcus's smile faltered as the marshals moved in. He tried to raise his cane, but he was an old man, and his power had always been in shadows, not physical strength. As they handcuffed him, he looked at Maya. "I gave you a home," he spat. "You would have rotted in a group home without me." "I would rather have rotted than be your puppet," Maya said, her voice shaking but strong. She turned her back on him. As Marcus was dragged out, shouting curses at the Sterling name, the courtroom fell silent again. The villain was gone. The secret was out. But the wreckage remained. The settlement took 3 days to finalize, but the emotional fallout took much longer. Harrison resigned as CEO of Sterling Pharma. The board begged him to stay, fearing the stock drop, but he refused. He appointed a temporary successor and cashed out 40% of his shares, enough to start his own venture capital firm focused on ethical medical technology. He wanted nothing to do with the empire his mother and uncle had fought over like dogs. His mother, Victoria, pleaded guilty to coercion and bribery to avoid a public trial. She was sentenced to house arrest and probation. Her social standing in Boston obliterated. She sat alone in her mansion, surrounded by orchids, with no one to call. But the real story was in a small park in Cambridge, 2 weeks after the trial. Harrison sat on a bench, watching Noah chase a pigeon. The boy was fast, clumsy, and loud, everything a 4-year-old should be. Maya sat next to him. She was holding a coffee, staring at the river. "He likes you," Maya said quietly. He likes that I buy him ice cream, Harrison smiled sadly. I'm trying not to buy his affection, but I feel like I have 5 years of presents to make up for. You don't have to buy him, Maya said. She turned to look at him. You just have to show up. That's all I ever wanted, Harry, for you to show up. I'm sorry, Harrison said. He had said it 1,000 times, but it never felt like enough. I'm sorry I was weak. I'm sorry I didn't fight harder back then. I'm sorry I let my mother get in my head. We were both played, Maya said, taking a sip of coffee. Marcus, he wrote the script for my life. He told me what to wear, what to study, how to act. I don't even know who I am, Harry. Am I the girl who loves Thai food? Or did he tell me to love it because he knew you liked it? Harrison reached out and took her hand. It was rough, calloused from years of working double shifts. You're the woman who raised that boy alone, Harrison said fiercely. You're the woman who stood up to a billion-dollar legal team and won. You're the woman who worked 3 jobs to pay for heart surgery. Marcus didn't do that. You did. That's who you are. Maya looked at their hands intertwined. So, what now? The judge gave us joint custody. Do we just swap him every weekend? Harrison took a deep breath. I bought a house. In Brookline. It has a big backyard. A swing set. It has a guest cottage. Maya raised an eyebrow. A guest cottage? For you, Harrison said. If you want it. I'm not asking for us to be what we were. Not yet. Too much has happened. But I want to be a father. And I want you to be safe. No more eviction notices. No more working at dive bars. I want to support you. And I want us to figure out who we are without Marcus or Victoria pulling the strings. Maya looked at Noah, who had tripped over his own feet and was laughing. She looked back at Harrison. The stormy gray eyes were soft now. I hate the name Sterling, she admitted. Me too, Harrison laughed. I was thinking of changing it. Maybe to something new. Like what? Harrison looked at the sky, clear and blue for the first time in weeks. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Maya squeezed his hand. It wasn't a promise of forever. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was real. Okay, she whispered. We'll figure it out. They say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes blood is poison. Harrison Sterling had to lose his empire to find his family. He learned that being a father isn't about biology or trust funds. It's about showing up when it counts. Maya learned that her worth wasn't defined by the lies of the men who claimed to own her, but by the strength of the love she had for her son. In the end, they didn't just win a court case. They broke a cycle of manipulation that had lasted for generations. They walked away from the Sterling name to build something that money couldn't buy, a truth of their own. If you found out your entire relationship was orchestrated by a family feud, could you ever trust that person again? Would you have forgiven Harrison for being manipulated? Or was his weakness unforgivable? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, justice, and redemption, please smash that like button, share this video with someone who needs a little drama today, and subscribe to the channel for more twisted real-life stories. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.